A Tramp in Berlin is a book about the journey Mark Twain and his family took to the German capital. This journey began in 1891 in New York, where America's most famous writer boarded the steamship Gascogne to the Old World. This book, brought to you by Berlinica Publishing, features Twain's adventures in Berlin. It includes some of Twain's never-before-published stories. We will now hear more from Andreas Austilat, Metro reporter at Tagesspiegel, Berlin's leading daily.
We are here at Potsdamer Street, which goes all the way to Potsdamer Platz, the center of Berlin. 120 years ago, the author Mark Twain lived nearby, over there at Körnerstrasse. And that is where we are going now. This is the former telegraph office from 1902. At this location was the tenement where Mark Twain and his family, his wife Olivia and his daughters Susie, Clara and Jean, rented a flat. The family and their two maids lived on the second floor, with a bathtub, a tiled stove and all other amenities. The whole street had been constructed in just a few years, as Berlin tripled in size during the Gilded Age. The estate agent had promised a noble neighborhood to Mark Twain, but the author would soon refer to Körnerstrasse as ragpicker's paradise, and his daughter Clara complained about noisy, dirty children and unkempt, half-clad women. Twain wrote a funny story about Körnerstrasse, but his wife Olivia forbade him to publish it.
Yes, it was noisy. It was not merely noisy in a general citified way. It was noisy in a way of its own. That is to say, the night was made up of deep stretches of silence, broken to smash at irregular intervals by the thundering rush of heavy wagons that made the house quake and brought us broad awake and quivering. A half-hour's sleep, then another awful rush and roar over the rough stone pavement. Another interval, then another half-dozen people would tramp through the short street, whooping and howling and laughing and screeching like maniacs.
We are at the Brandenburg Gate and at the Hotel Adlon, rebuilt after the wall came down. Over there, at Wilhelmstrasse, where the flag is flying, was the Hotel Royal. This was the place where Mark Twain and his family moved to on New Year's Eve 1892. This was definitely a much better place, a suite with 8 rooms. From the front windows, Twain's daughters could see the Emperor parading along Unter den Linden by horse or horse carriage through the Brandenburg Gate into the Tiergarten.
This is the Hotel Royal in 1892. Here, Mark Twain became enamored with Berlin life. He wrote about Berlin's horse-drawn passenger cars and the postal service. He visited the Royal Library on Unter den Linden to research a book about the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. He began a biography of Wilhelmina of Preussen, the sister of Friedrich the Great, and he translated the children's book Slovenly Peter into English. He also wrote an extensive travel letter for the Chicago Tribune, where he called Berlin the Chicago of Europe.
I feel lost in Berlin. It has no resemblance to the city I had supposed it was. There was once a Berlin which I would have known, a dingy city in a marsh with rough streets, muddy and lantern-lighted, dividing straight rows of ugly houses all alike. But that Berlin has disappeared. The bulk of the Berlin of today has about it no suggestion of a former period. It's a new city, the newest I've ever seen. The main mass of the city looks as if it had been built last week. Berlin is a surprise in a great many ways.
Twain soon became a major celebrity in Berlin. Newspapers wrote stories about him, and he met famous people, such as the historian Theodor Mommsen, who resembled him so much that some people confused them, and Rudolf Virchow, the father of modern medicine. In 1892, he even met William II, the Emperor of Germany, who lived in the nearby Berlin city castle.
In February, Twain met the Kaiser for dinner, only a few days before a rally of workers took place on Unter den Linden.
The lack of bread and work resulted in a mob gathering in front of the palace yesterday. They uttered revolutionary cries. Baker's bread was distributed to them, but they threw it away. Crowds of the proletariat drift up and down the Holy Land today, but the emperor rode out as usual. And after him, I saw the whole force of the royal carriages following. Apparently, all the royal women and children have turned out to show that they are not afraid.
This is the place where the emperor used to live, but practically nothing is left of the castle. This also applies to all the other places Twain was familiar with in those times. In April 1892, when the Chicago of Europe was published, Twain and his family had already moved on.